Tipperary went from a fairly strong position against Galway, 7 points up at half time, to end up losing 321 to 313 by 8 points, 15 point turnaround in the second half. I'm joined now with by Shane Brophy of the Nenagh to talk about that game. Shane, you were there. What happened?
Yeah, it was I'd say I think the 7 point lead at half time was a little false in a way. Like, because I don't think Tipperary were really hurling with any fluency in the first half. They were like it just they took advantage of the win, got three very very well worked goals. But Galway were just a bit more fluid on the ball. I suppose that they did win. I think it was 13 frees against Tipp in the first half. Six resulted in scores, so that kept Galway in the game. And once they took over in the second half, Tipp couldn't live with them. I suppose it was a similar sort of performance from the game against Waterford. There was a very, very, very sluggish effort again. Like they're really just struggled to deal with Galway. Like especially in the second half, like their half back line really ripped into the game. Pádraig Mannion, Shane Cooney, Fintan Burke dominated the high ball, and from there, Tipp really, really struggled. So I think a disappointing way to finish the National League. You were hoping maybe after last week to see a bit of a response from the Tipperary team, but it never really came. As I said, the first half probably scoreline was probably a little false in terms of I suppose the amount of hurling Tip did in the first half with the win behind them.
Did you sense that, like, right? So last year Tipperary were average enough in the league and ended up losing at home to Dublin, getting knocked out. I think it was pretty much like the same time of the year. You're talking early to mid March. Ended up with the All Ireland. Do you see anything different about this? Is there anything to be concerned about?
Not particularly. I suppose it does look very, very similar in terms of that. Like, I suppose that the worrying factor would be that we thought that maybe Tipperary, after the late start of their training, would maybe be slower in terms of their start to the league. But actually, it's just their two games at the back end of the league against Waterford and now Galway, probably their two worst performances. Their two best ones were probably in the defeats to Limerick and Cork. So, I suppose in a strange way, it is as the league goes on, they've been getting poorer and poorer. But then you just look talking to Liam Sheehy the last few weeks. There's no sense of any panic from him at all. He's fairly relaxed. They're off to Spain today for a 4-day training camp. So look, I suppose on the basis that Tipperary, when they came to the first round of the championship last year against Cork, were really on it on the 12th of May last year. What the plan is, and I suppose that they're planning for is that it's all about the summer this year and making sure that they negotiate that initially. They negotiate those the Munster Championship and make sure they get the number of points they need to get through to the All Ireland series. And I think that's the plan. Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, he was really sluggish against Waterford, but he took his two goals brilliantly well yesterday. And I suppose only for a brilliant James Cahill to stay in the first half, he would have finished with a hat trick. Like he was probably the only tip forward that really looked like he was on it there yesterday. You had the likes of Jason Ford missed a couple of shots maybe that you usually stick over in his sleep. Like Dylan Quirk, as you said, he battled hard, even in the first half on Pádraig Mannion. I thought he did pretty well. Seamus Callan didn't get an awful lot of service, but what he did get, he looked threatening enough. So, say Cian Darcy, when he got pockets of space, was pretty good. But you can't say many of the tip subs. I say Michael Breen looked lively when he came on, but very few of the subs you could say did. Anthony Sean O'Brien was probably thrown to the wolves when he came on because Paul Matter was under pressure. It was difficult for likes of him when he came on. But I say, I think Tipp, in terms of what, like Paddy Caldell didn't get much of a run there yesterday, but like I think he had a positive league. Jerome Cahill, I thought maybe you would have seen a bit more from him now in the league so far, and only got a few minutes towards the end, so maybe they're not quite sold on him. But look, as Liam Sheedy suggested last year, between the league and the championship, there's 8 weeks to put down. Guys are going to come into form in club championship, maybe then through the training block in from the 12th of April up to the 10th of May, and I suppose that it's all systems go for that 10th of May.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways, is it possibly even a relief to him that he doesn't have to worry about getting to a league final, and does this have any impact on the club, that he knows now there's a very set schedule from here on out and he can plan?
Quite possibly so, yeah. And I think that they're in Spain till this Friday. Whether any of the players will play, there's the second round of County Hurling League this weekend. There's no games on the 22nd, but there will be a block of three county championship matches beginning the 29th of March. So, like, I think maybe the players will benefit from it too. It'll be go back to the clubs for a couple of weeks, refocus, and then come back in on the 13th of April and really focus on that first round game against Waterford. So you look at Tipperary's schedule for the championship. They have home games against Cork and Clare, which will be pinpointing for a win. Then you have away games against Limerick and Waterford. So, like, that Limerick game is tough. So if you're looking at getting the 6 points minimum that will get you out of the Munster Championship round robin section, the Waterford game is the one you have to pinpoint as getting the 2 points for the away win, and then hopefully winning your 2 home games to get those 6 points. Was that Limerick away game it's going to be very, very
I'm
difficult.
not sure if you saw the Waterford game against Limerick the other night. I mean, Limerick, as ever, in rude health, they won it by 4, but they were ahead by 8 twice throughout the game. Like, it's in some ways it's almost hard to see Limerick being beaten this year, because they're not going to be caught the way they were by Kilkenny last year in that semi-final. There's nothing that can be thrown at them, I suppose, that they're not going to be expecting at this point. And obviously there was the Declan Hannon getting the shot to the head that time in the semi-final. But do you feel like they're a step ahead of everyone else, even though Tipp are champions?
I think that based on what we've seen this year, they are. Like, maybe, like, there's no doubt. I think when Limerick get their A game right, I don't think there's anybody to stop them. But I suppose what we saw last year is when they don't have their A game up to, like, that can be caught as they were by Cork, as they were by Tipp, and as they were by Kilkenny in the championship last year. So, like, there's no doubt that they've definitely set about this year's league in terms of making sure that every player will get enough game time. They've balanced it out. I suppose they're fierce unlucky with Richie English losing out. But look, the likes of Aaron Costello have come in there and done very well. He's tried Barry Nash at cornerback on Saturday against Waterford. I'm not sure how much of a success that was, or whether long term in the championship that will work. But look, they're trying these things. I say, like, it was probably a 4-point hammering against Waterford. But Waterford probably played that game as sort of a free puck as well. Like, they were in a quarter final. I don't think they probably ever expected to go up there and win the game as well. But, like, you have to think that there's no doubt Limerick are the team to catch at this stage. But look, I think they're far from unbeatable. And as Donald Cusick said on the telly last night, I suppose the one negative from a Limerick point of view is that everybody knows how they play and teams can plan for them. But as I said, once they get in their stride in terms of that style of game, I think they're very, very hard to stop.
I just don't know how you actually would set up a game plan for them. It's not like you can put just a simple little structure in place to stop those balls being fed into the corners for Galan, or just right in front of him to wheel around and knock over on his left side. I think number one, and this is something, like, I've been praising Conor Prunty a lot, but one of the points the other night that Galan got from play, he allowed Galan to get onto his left hand side when he was out at the sideline, and if he forced him onto his right at the sideline, I mean, that's one thing for sure. If you're defending Galan, you have to try and get him on that side the way Hugh Lawler did in the semi-final last year. But how do you actually stop the ball going in there in the first place? Those lovely balls being measured in, because they're so huge around the middle. Gerard Hegarty, I mean, when they have a full team out there, you're talking about Tom Morrissey, Kyle Hayes was tried midfield, Will O'Donoghue, who's an absolute monster. So if all those guys are winning the ball around the middle and are passing it around to each other, they have the option of a runner on the shoulder, shoot from distance with brilliant players. Keane Lynch, Declan Hannon can feed it in. And then they've got good options inside. Like, Graham Mulcahy was absolutely on fire. David Dempsey's got a great hand and he can move as well. So they just seem to have it every which way. And like I talked about that last year, that we've an awful lot of film on how they play at this stage. But still in all, it's like playing Barcelona, and they're very different. But, like, in the sense of everyone knows what Barcelona are going to do, but nobody can stop it.
Yeah, I just wonder, I suppose, if you were to be ultra negative, like, do you crowd the middle? Do you actually play two spare men back, one to cover Galan and one to cover the other guy into the corner, whether Seamus Flanagan or Graham Mulcahy? And then if you did a two spare men there, if they were coming through the middle, those two spare men could see them coming and maybe clog up that area as well. So look, it'll be interesting to see what team counteracts. And I suppose the best way of doing it is doing what Kilkenny did and just bringing ravenous work rate and just knock them off their stride, like what Cork did in that first round Munster Championship game last year. And then maybe there was circumstances for Limerick they hadn't played the first round game and maybe were a little rusty, and Cork had that bit between your teeth after losing to Tipperary the week before. Like, as you said, I just think it'd be interesting to see maybe how a Wexford. I suppose, yeah, I'd love to see maybe Wexford beat Galway next weekend, just to have that Wexford Limerick semi final, to see how maybe a Wexford will cope with a Limerick. I presume the draw determines that at this stage that it can't be a Limerick Wexford final, but I think from a tactical point of view, you'd love to see maybe a Limerick Wexford League semi final, just to see maybe what Davy would try to do to try and negate
Yeah,
that
that'd be
Limerick
a brilliant
style.
matchup. Kilkenny against Wexford, that game's going to be in Nolan Park. Do you think it would be a huge thing for Liam Cahill in his first year if he could actually go to Kilkenny and get his team to a semi-final? Like, to be fair, they were beaten. It was a comfortable 4 point win for Limerick, but he tried out an awful lot of players. Like, he tried out a new goalkeeper. There was pretty much changes on every line of the field, and they didn't give up, because we've seen Watford teams in the past. They're getting beaten, and it goes from a beating to an absolute annihilation. But this team didn't give up.
No, I think when I left on Saturday night, when I left it at halftime watching, I said it's hard to see any way back for Waterford here, and then I saw a 4 point defeat, and it probably just shows you that this type of spirit that Liam Cahill has got into this group. Like, well, even though we're well beaten from a long way out, that playing to the very end, even with an inexperienced group, like the likelihood he's going to go back to his first choice team next week. He'll bring back Stephen O'Keefe, he'll bring back Austin Gleeson, Kevin Moore will be back from suspension. And I think they're going to have a real go at this. Because, I think there's one thing about a Liam Cahill team: they won't stand back from anything. He'll see this as, if you can go to Nolan Park and maybe come out of there with a win, we're really on track. And if they win that game, possibly maybe clearing a semi-final, I think there's definitely an upshot here for Waterford. I think they'll see this as a fantastic test of where this team are at. Look, if they go to Nolan Park and maybe perform well and lose narrowly, I think he'll take that as a nice way maybe to exit the league going into the championship in that first game against Tipp.
I thought it was very interesting, one of the quotes from Liam Cahill after the game the other day, and you would have dealt with him several times over the years when he was minor, under 21 and under 20 manager, but he spoke about his team saying, I think quite a number of my players tonight got a real taste of what is required to play at this level, and some of them were found wanting. Now, we know in the past when he's talked about like, he would have had parents of minor players ringing him about their lad not being on the team, and like, he came out in the media and he said, everyone thinks that they're geese or swans, but they're not, and he's not going to send soft hurlers up the line to the senior team, that kind of stuff. Does that feed into the general sort of mentality of Cahill, that if you're not up to it, I'm going to tell you straight to your face?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Like, I suppose when you looked at the team he put out last weekend, you said, God, is he putting this team to the wolves, really? Because, like, if they come out of Limerick with a 10 or 15 point defeat, what'll it be do for those guys, the likes of Montgomery, and there's a few guys that are really getting their head. But look, he trusted them guys. He probably saw enough in them to say, look, I trust these guys to give what they can out there. If it's not enough, it's not enough. But look, I think he will be pretty pleased with what he saw. He knows that it's going to be exactly the same in Nolan Park next Sunday against Kilkenny. It's if you're not ready for what's coming against Kilkenny. If you're not ready for it, you won't be there during the summer. But I think, like, while there's probably limitations to the Waterford panel at the moment, I think himself and Michael Beaver are going to get the very, very best out of them. And like, I think they'll be while I don't think they'll beat Kilkenny on Sunday, I think they'll be extremely
Have you been impressed with Kilkenny this year? Because there's word coming out that James Maher's after been dropped off the panel, and for my money, he's a very, very good player. You could play him, I would say, anywhere in the middle eight. Really, really good player. So that just shows either he's sending out a message to James, or he's sending out a message to his panel that nobody is above getting dropped here. I even remember the Leinster final in 2018 against Galway. Jeez, James Maher had an unbelievable game, and I thought, this is a guy who could terrorise plenty of teams. But have you been impressed in an overall sense by Kilkenny?
Yeah, I suppose it's a typical Brian Cody thing. If Brian thinks that maybe there's some player that has we all know that James Maher is pretty good, but if he feels that he's not getting the very best out of him, there's no point in hanging on to him. And I suppose, look, you have to be impressed with Kilkenny. They're always ultra consistent, even without TJ Reid and Joey Hold, and like they've gotten to the league quarter final. Whether TJ will be back for the knockout stages, we're not so sure. You probably think at this stage he probably will be, because Brian Cody, he goes out to try and win every game. I suppose they're fierce unlucky with Adrian Mullen going down for the rest of the year. Like, that's a huge loss the fact that Richie Hogan is playing so early in the year with his knee troubles is a bit of a surprise, but like you cannot be but impressed with what Kilkenny do. You always think every year maybe they're slipping, but they come back with better players. The likes of Tommy Walsh, and he's settled in nicely. Darren Mullen had a very, very good winter campaign with Ballyhale. You just wonder where they're going to get the quality of scores from. I suppose on the plus side, Jerry Elward maybe fell away for a couple of years. He looks like he's back to his best again. So look, whether maybe the freshness in the backroom team in terms of DJ, maybe doing some of the training, maybe there's a freshness there too that we might see a rejuvenated Kilkenny this year. It's hard to even use the word rejuvenated. Kilkenny got to an All-Ireland final, but you probably felt last year, even in the win over Limerick, they were probably just that little bit short in the forwards. But so far it's been so good with TJ Reid to come back in.
Okay, thanks very much, Shane. I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon. Thanks for watching our game. Don't forget to like and share the videos, and if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe.